It feels like everywhere you turn these days, someone's telling you what you should want, what you should do, right? How you should live your life.
Yeah, exactly. It's overwhelming.
It really is like a tidal wave of opinions. And it's hard to even know where to start sometimes, you know?
Yeah, you just want to tune it all out.
Totally. So today we're going to try and cut through all that noise.
Okay, sounds good.
We're doing a deep dive into this text called Talking About Jesus. And
Interesting.
yeah, it has this really interesting perspective on like finding true peace and figuring out where you're supposed to be going in life.
Okay, so right away, what struck me about this text is how it talks about God.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't just say like, oh, there's this powerful being out there.
Right.
It describes him as the one and only sovereign and gracious God, like emphasizing both his authority and his love.
That's a good point. And it makes you think about like, okay, if he's the ultimate authority, then...
Right. Does that mean we have no say?
Yeah, exactly. But then it gets really interesting because it goes on to say that he bends low to care for each of us individually. Oh, wow. So it's not like this distant, uncaring authority figure.
Exactly. It's saying that he's actually intimately involved in the details of our lives, which I thought was super interesting.
So he's powerful,
Yeah.
but he actually cares about us as individuals.
Yeah, and not just in a general sense. It uses this phrase, intimately involved. So you get the sense that he's really present in our lives.
That's powerful. And it actually kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
So the text goes on to say that basically, even before you were born, God was already writing your story.
Like he had a plan for us.
Yeah, it uses this phrase, divine narrative, which I think is really beautiful. And it's not just like the big picture stuff. It's literally saying that every season, every trial, every joy, it's all part of this bigger story that he's writing.
So even the things that feel random or maybe even bad, those are all part of the plan.
Exactly. And that could be a tough thing to wrap your head around, especially because, like we were saying earlier, there's so much pressure to just follow your heart, do what you want.
Right, like everyone's telling you to chase your dreams and rely on your own understanding.
Yeah. And this text actually pushes back against that pretty strongly.
Oh, really? How so?
It straight up says that true peace and joy come from surrendering to his will.
Wow, that's definitely a different perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely countercultural, and it can be easy to dismiss it as like, oh, just blindly following someone else's rules.
But the text doesn't really frame it that way, does it?
Not at all. It actually
Yeah.
makes a pretty compelling argument.
Okay, I'm curious.
So it basically says that our own understanding is limited. We're influenced by our emotions, our past experiences, all these things.
Right, we can only see things from our own perspective.
Exactly. And so the text is saying that God's plans are crafted with perfect wisdom because he sees the whole picture.
So it's not just about blindly obeying, it's about trusting a wisdom that's bigger than our own.
Exactly. And that can actually be really freeing because it takes the pressure off of us to always have the right answer.
That makes sense, and it kind of connects to what the text says about walking forward in faith.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you know exactly what the future holds,
Right.
but it means that you can take each step with confidence because you know that you're not alone.
And that God is your guide even when things are tough.
Exactly. It uses this image of God being a refuge and your guide during storms, which I think is really beautiful.
It's like that sense of security that you have someone looking out for you even when you can't see the path clearly.
And it all comes back to his love. The text says that his love is a firm foundation, and it emphasizes that it's unshakable.
So it's not like it depends on us doing everything right.
Exactly. You don't have to earn it. It's already there.
Which I think is really important because so much of the message we get from the world is that we have to prove our worth.
Totally. And this text is saying you're already deeply cherished, wholly known, and eternally loved.
Just as you are.
Exactly. And so instead of constantly striving for acceptance, you can actually just rest in his love.
Let his peace fill your heart and his presence be your joy.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's a really powerful message, especially in a world that's so focused on achievement and self-improvement.
So what does it actually look like to live this out?
Well, the text ends with a pretty clear call to action. It says, today and every day, choose to follow him.
So it's a daily choice.
Yeah, it's about turning away from fear and embracing the journey that he has prepared for you.
Even if it's not the journey you would have chosen for yourself.
Exactly. And the encouragement is that his plans are far greater than anything we could imagine.
And that his faithfulness will never fail.
That's reassuring, right?
It is. It's like knowing that no matter what happens, you're not going to be abandoned.
So to kind of bring it all together, this deep dive into talking about Jesus has really highlighted a different way of thinking.
It's about shifting our focus from constantly looking inward to trusting in a bigger plan.
Exactly. And finding peace and security, not in our own striving, but in God's love and guidance.
It's about surrendering to his will, not out of blind obedience, but out of a deep trust that he knows what's best for us.
And I think the big question for all of us is, what does that look like in our everyday lives?
Yeah, how do we actually make that shift from self-reliance to trusting in God?
It's definitely something to think about.
It is, and maybe it starts with just being open to the possibility that there's a different way.
That maybe true freedom isn't about getting everything we want, but about aligning ourselves with God's will.
And that his love is enough.
Yeah, it really is something to consider. So as you go about your day, I hope you'll take some time to reflect on what we've talked about today and see how it resonates with your own life and your own experiences.
It's an ongoing journey for sure.
It really is, and I think that's okay.
It is, yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive,
Absolutely, it's been great.
and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.